Welcome to Charity Therapy, a podcast from Birkin Law about building better nonprofits. I'm your host, Jess Birkin.
My name is Matt Barnett. I am the Papa Bear or CEO of a company called Bonjoro. We do one-to-one personalized video messages, and I'm based out of Sydney, Australia.
Right on. I love anybody whose title is Papa Bear. That's really awesome. I could tell we were going to be friends right away.
Oh, yeah.
So thanks for being here. I thought that it would be really interesting for you to come on because at this time right now, it's July 2020, and we're kind of going through this crazy communications change. And I'm working with my nonprofit clients, and I'm on Twitter, and I'm watching nonprofits, and there's so much discussion about how do we shift, right? I'm talking to my clients and they're trying to figure out how do they do their fundraiser online? How do they do their annual meeting online? And one of the places this keeps coming up is donor engagement. And so I wanted to talk with you a little bit about video and how nonprofits can be using video to better interact with their donors and their funders.
I'll share just a little bit around what we do, and we do a very specific type of video. So I think just generally speaking, if you're not using video with your donors, with your community, get on board. It's just the best way of getting personality and communication across. Wonderfully written blogs are awesome, but most of our communication as humans comes from facial expression and storytelling and seeing emotion on people's faces. So video across spectrum is great. Where we have found it's working in a slightly different way is as a way to personally connect with donors on a daily basis. So rather than kind of HD, like all the bells and whistles video, what we do is we say, look, when you get a new donation, it's pretty awesome to, within that day, send out a quick 30-second video to that donor saying, thank you, Mrs. Harcher, for your $753 to the foundation. I just want to tell you how much that means to us, and this is where it's going to go. And so taking a very small moment out of your day to thank individual donors has a huge impact, because for most charities, nonprofits that we're involved with, when we donate, we tend to get, we obviously get monthly updates, yearly updates, but we don't tend to get that personal connection. And I think one of the things I'd suggest is missing as a donor is this ability to kind of connect where my funds are going to kind of the end results. So I think the idea of trying to work out what impact we have, and I think especially take people in my age range, I guess kind of early 30s, coming into giving in a kind of more serious way, impact is everything. And the best way to see impact is to connect with, who are the benefactors, who are the team on the ground, who am I actually helping here? And so if you can get that on kind of personalized level, it's thoroughly engaging, and back to me as a donor, I would rather give funds to one or two organizations that I know my funds are going to go the furthest than spread them around 15 or kind of jump around every year. And so again, if I can connect with people, that's a massive hook to kind of keep me engaged and keep me involved with that organization.
Totally. Well, and fundraising is really all about relationships, and it's all about a values exchange. And that the way that you start forming a relationship with your donors is so important. I find that the thank you for the donor is often late. There's this great Twitter account that I follow called The Whiny Donor, and she just sort of like makes lots of gifts across the air and then sort of like blasts the organizations that don't. I don't think she calls them out by name, but she'll like point out the really bad practices. And a lot of them have to do with not thanking people. There are a lot of studies in this area, and I was looking at some data from the 2018 Fundraising Effectiveness Project, and they were saying that donor attrition averages 55%. So that means that the donor retention rate, like less than half of all donors decided to give again during that year. So it's really all about relationships and connecting with people, because the business community knows that customer acquisition is very expensive, right? I have the MBA for nonprofits, but I watch Shark Tank and I listen to the sharks talk about like what are your customer acquisition costs, right? That's a thing. The nonprofits have that too. And so I feel like what happens in the nonprofit sector is we spend a lot of time trying to acquire the donor, and then we fall off on retaining the donor. And so I love the idea of video as a way to like start creating that relationship immediately and cementing that and having touch points throughout the process. Maybe you can speak to some of that, like how to keep people engaged over time.
Yeah, for sure. And there are so many synergies between a nonprofit and donors versus a business and customers. Like I run our business, we have attrition, we have the same problems. So honestly, if you want lessons, look towards successful businesses because they're doing the exact same thing as you. It's no different at all, really. They might not have as good ethics or morals, but they're doing the same things.
Yeah.
So yeah, like to that point you just mentioned, there's a lot of stats going around, but I think one that kind of feels about right to me is I think it's 7 times cheaper to get another dollar off an existing donor or customer than it is to go out and pay for a new donor or customer. And this is not just something that nonprofits do badly. It's something that businesses as a whole do badly because we always like the new and shiny, and so we always go after new customers, new donors. Looking after your existing donor base and not just getting them to redonate, but getting them to increase donations over time is actually a much more effective use of your organization's time in terms of payback over time. I mentioned around personal videos, kind of 4 points where it comes into play. And just very quickly, the way it's set up and the way we do it is that it does plug into, if you're using a CRM or using donation systems, so that when you have donors, we just send a little notification to one of the team and say, hey, look, Mr. Blunt from Michigan's just donated XYZ, send him a message. So the ops side of it's quite easy. More important is kind of where to use these. I'll start at the top and come down to retention. A lot of this starts with making your best first impression. And however you do this, I think it's incredibly important. I think if you you only get to make a first impression once. If you start off the relationship with the donor on the best possible footing, then they're going to be more engaged from day one. They're going to be more active. They're going to be looking into more. They're going to kind of stay with you longer regardless. So I always think making best first impression is the best thing you can do. And I think thanking when a donation comes in is kind of paramount to this. And obviously this might depend, for you might want to just spend personal time on the larger donors and obviously the small donors thank in a smaller way. But again, making sure you do this pretty quickly is really important. I think once you have a donor on board, there's a next stage, which I think is quite hard to get your head around, which is what I would refer to as activation. So you have a donor, they've come in, that's awesome. Are they engaged with the organization? Are they taking a next step forward? Because the more they invest in terms of time, be it learning about what it is you're doing or reading documentation or getting involved in other ways, the more they invest, the more likely they are to stick around.
Sure, because then they're saying, I'm the kind of person who does this. This is one of the organizations I'm part of. I support them. It's not just a one-time deal.
Exactly. And there's a whole psychology of, the more you invest in something, obviously the less likely you are to step away because you've got a lot of sunk cost, a lot of sunk time into that thing that you're supporting or the thing that you're doing. And again, this is no different to business and charities. So my suggestion is, there's a second point here, which is really important, which is make sure that donor gets engaged within the first 2 weeks maximum. I can't tell you what engagement means to your organizations. Different people might have different levels. It might just be to follow you on social media, to follow 3 of your accounts. It might be to go and read an education piece you put out. It might be to share a petition or something else. But try and work out what the next step is and really work on driving donors to do this. You can use video as a way to do this. So check in a week later and say, hey Tom, I saw you've obviously come on board. It's awesome. If you want to get more involved, I really would suggest going and doing XYZ.
Yeah, Here's where I see this go totally wrong. New small nonprofit is, they're trying to do the right thing by thanking donors, but they miss that engagement activation piece. So you make the donation, then like 2-3 weeks later, you get a very formal paper letter in the mail for your tax records, which I have told them to do if they're my client. And I'm like, yes, that's great, but you just left your donor sitting there for 3 weeks and they already forgot that they made the donation potentially. And you haven't invited them to go deeper with you. So I love that idea that you could use this video as a way to invite them into your world and get them activated. That's so cool.
And you could do these two things in the same step, obviously. So say thank you, but then have a next step, and make this next step simple. By the way, don't ask them to go and fill out 100 forms. Yeah, what's the next thing they can do that you think if they do that, they'll then go and do another thing, another thing, another thing. So if you have a great Twitter account, the next thing is probably to follow you on Twitter and maybe share a tweet. And then once they follow you, you know that your team on Twitter are going to engage them and they're going to have a great time. I can't understate that. Overstate that enough? Overstate that enough. I definitely do this piece. Next, there's another two parts in the funnel where generally we see video used by nonprofits very effectively, and this is what I would call donor re-engagement. So this is with those lapsed donors we've talked about, the other 55% that do not come back. You haven't necessarily lost them. You do have an opportunity to bring them back into the fold. Sending a piece of direct mail may not be enough. A lot of the time, it's a very passive engagement piece. Investing a bit of time in doing, especially with your larger donors, in doing things like personal videos. Hey Keith, just want to update you on the impact your donation made over this year and where it's going, and here's a couple of the new initiatives. And again, this is very quick. Taking the time to do that comes back to psychology. The first point is that the person's seen that you've stopped for your day and invested in them, and they're going to potentially invest back. It's incredibly effective about getting donors to re-engage. We have quite a lot of, we work with Cure, who's a large charity in the States, who specifically uses us for this stage. So they go after lapsed donors and they use their team to drop personalized messages through, and they have a huge reactivation rate because of it, because people haven't necessarily fallen off the wagon intentionally.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people are busy. And just because you sent them 5 pieces of direct mail in the last 6 months doesn't mean that they don't care about your mission anymore, but it might mean that they get too much mail or they're not looking at it. And I think a mistake that a lot of charities make is just thinking, well, this person is gone, they haven't responded, so they just must not care anymore.
Yeah, and that's absolutely not true, because again, having been through this process myself, and chosen which nonprofits to get involved with and which ones not to, and tried out a few things, you're obviously interested in the cause. If you join, if you donate
Yep.
for the first time, you're obviously interested. You've already done some research, so then the case just comes back to remind that person why you're involved, remind them of the impact they make. And I think everything, again, being on this side of the fence, everything for us comes down to impact. Like everything. Like I'll look at it and I'll be like, okay, look, I love, I want to save bandicoots or some wild animal. I think, okay, well, there's 5 organizations that do this. If I'm going to give $1,000, which one of those will make the biggest impact with that $1,000? And some organizations may have better stats and better marketing and be more developed than others. They don't necessarily make the bigger impact, or they don't necessarily tell the best stories. So there's still a point to cut through here where the personalized video thing is interesting, because you don't have to have the developed brand. You don't have to have the developed stories. You can reach out in person and just say, this is what I'm doing today. This is where it matters. And people will connect with that.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, I think one of the limiting scripts that goes through people's heads is that, oh, video is really complicated. Video requires me to have, this expensive consultant with this high-end camera, and I really need to know what I'm doing. And gee, I'm intimidated by this. And boy, I already have a lot on my plate at my job at the nonprofit. I don't have time to figure out how to do video. So I love how simple the one-to-one personalized video is, because A, it's easy to use, but B, it's okay that it's not this high-end, super well-lit, like glamorous production, right? It feels very personal, which is exactly the point.
I mean, like, imperfection is beautiful. I mean, this is the like I'm not perfect. If I see people who are perfect, I'm like, okay, I'm not that person. When I see people who are imperfect, I'm like, okay, I'm like this person. So think about personal connection. The people you like, they're not perfect. So when you get a video from someone which is very authentic and they're doing their thing, it's much more relatable. And because it's more relatable, you're gonna be like, okay, this is someone like me. I can get behind this.
Right. And it's literally forming the relationship, whereas like a shiny, shiny, well produced video that you play at your gala reception is not, that's not creating a human connection.
Yeah, so it's again, it's not even the same psychology of when you meet someone in the street or at a coffee shop, like all those things that we did and will hopefully do again. It's the same scenario. I think one of the things just to mention this point, because obviously we do hear that some people are a little bit nervous to get on video the first time. I think understanding why is potentially important. And someone mentioned this to me. I think it's very holds true. Is that I think for a long time video was the medium of film and theatre, and so we put it on a bit of a pedestal. Yet we've forgotten that all video is just a medium. It's no it's just all it's doing is just talking to someone face to face, but in a different location. It's not film. It's not theatre anymore. That has gone. This is not what we're talking about. This is just a camera on your smartphone.
Oh, Lord knows we've all done enough Zoom meetings in the last 3 or 4 months that hopefully we've demystified being on video, and people are getting used to the idea.
Yeah. Carrying on this, so to the last point, which is where we started on the funnel, and this is what I would call donors for life, or there's another term I really like, which is superfans. This is how you create these donors who are going to stay with you and not just give for the next kind of year, next 2 years, but stay with you for the next 30 or 40 years potentially. How do you create these long-term advocates? I think if you follow this funnel, it's really been helped by making your best first impression and getting them over the line at the very beginning. I think then where it's very easy to drop the ball here because it is hard to do, is to keep these donors engaged on a yearly basis at the least. And this is not just video. Obviously, you need to have a number of touch points to keep people going. Direct mail might be one of these. Obviously, social media is going to be one. But I think it's important to have your team connect personally with that donor at least once a year again, because they're like, oh, again, here are the real people behind the line. It might not be the same person. It might be different people. Where I've seen the absolute best use of this, and this is hard to do, is if you can actually get messages with the end beneficiaries. So we have a charity who works with kids schools out in Kenya, and they will actually go out there and they'll do 150 videos with the kids over a couple of weeks for each of their large donors, and they'll actually, because the video upload is not great in Kenya, they'll actually save it until they get back to base. And then they'll send these, and they're very quick. They're like 20 seconds long. And suddenly people get a very raw piece of content of someone on the ground in one of the schools with the kids. And they're like, oh no, these guys are out there doing the work. Like, this isn't all just, like they have their great videos, but they're like, behind this, there's real humans doing real work that really matters. And they do this once a year. And they do it with their large donors. They do tend to focus their time there. That just literally fills in, the end-to-end point. That's where my money's going. And because it's not edited, it's real. And that has a huge impact. And because it's only done once a year, it's much easier. You're not doing it on a daily basis. You can kind of build up and kind of off you go.
Yeah. And just the fact that it's personalized, everybody loves to talk about themselves, right? And so you're sending this personalized, real footage from the ground where you're doing the work. I love that idea. And I love, it's probably not viable for a large nonprofit to send 10,000 of those videos to each of their small donors. So they're using it as part of their major gifts strategy, which I think is great. And one of the things that smaller nonprofits don't do is they think that they really can't have a major gifts program, or they're not even thinking about increasing the size of donations. And sometimes that's just because they're not used to fundraising, or they haven't like had a lot of education or worked with consultants to like understand how to like build up to that. But I love the idea that you can use one-on-one personalized videos as sort of like this accessible platform that a nonprofit of almost any size or budget can really leverage to be successful growing those gifts. Because, you know, from that study, the fundraising effectiveness project, I was looking at the numbers, and basically larger organizations had a much higher net growth rate than smaller organizations. And that's, you know, often just because they have these big budgets with big staff. So I love the one-to-one personalized video that makes the big dog tricks more accessible to the little guys, right? I love that.
Yeah, like, and again, like I'm not an absolute expert on the non-profit sector, but I know the business side very well, and the same scenario. You have big businesses, big budgets, small businesses, no budgets. But I also would say the small teams. So we work with small non-profits and we work with large ones. The large ones put a team in place and they say, look, we're going to do this campaign. Here you are. Get on the videos. Off you go. I might have 5 people doing these, and they are probably more able to measure the effectiveness of this and kind of see the ROI, et cetera, et cetera. But then you have the small charities who have so much enthusiasm because they're just starting out. You know, it's often the founding team who are getting involved at this stage, which, look, personally, I love because it's people, it's the people who've started the organization and driven it forward. You know, and as that organization grows, it's quite unique to get them involved. And they have all this enthusiasm. They potentially have, yeah, often they're a little bit more innovative because they're younger and they're getting involved. So I think as a small charity, you know, this is almost one of your ways to stand out as well. Is that
Yes.
you are fresh. Like, use that energy, use that time, use all this to your advantage. Absolutely.
Well, and one of the things we talked about before we started was sort of like this idea that you can really set yourself apart from other nonprofits, because I find this to be true in the nonprofit sector as well as in the legal sector, where, you know, I do a lot of teaching of other lawyers. Both of those industries are very risk averse and hesitant to try new things in general. You always have people that are like innovators and like pushing the boundary. But overall, as an industry, I think the nonprofit sector can be very slow to like adopt something new because it feels risky and we don't want to spend money on things and take risks. So I love that this provides like a way in for nonprofits to do something new and exciting and really set themselves apart from the sort of like old dogs too.
Absolutely. And something like this, and I would say anything you try in your organization. So this is a great time to play around with new technologies and new ideas. When you do this, I'd say give everything a proper shot. So try it out for a week, but don't invest too much time. You don't have to. So with a large organization, when they go ahead, they'll have to get signed off. They'll kind of get the team together and they'll build everything and then launch the campaign, often without doing some very quick tests first. My advice to you is try out 20 of these videos. It'll take you 20 minutes. Invest, a decent but still kind of small amount of time, and you'll know very quickly if it's going to work for you. It doesn't have to be a huge investment, and you'll be able to test quickly. And then if it looks like it's starting to have an impact, put more time in and put more resources in. But it's a small ask to kind of give it a go and just see if this is going to work, because different things will absolutely work for different organizations and different teams in different ways.
That's great. Do you have sort of like, if you're new to using video and especially personalized video, do you have some sort of like, you know, getting started tips, right? Like, it seems to me like using the person's name would be one great tip to bring into your first videos.
Yeah. So the number one thing here, so I'd say 2 things. Yeah. One is be yourself. Don't do this in a perfect background with perfect lighting. Most of the successful videos we do, people get outdoors. They do this walking to the office, like getting a coffee, obviously with benefactors. Just be real about it. Kind of get over that hump as soon as you can. Secondly is, so make sure it's personalized. So use the person's name. If you have a donation amount, use the donation amount. Like, be specific. If you know which state they're in or which country they're in, mention that as well. Again, you want the person to go, "Oh my god, this is real," because unfortunately, because of the role of kind of, I guess, marketing over the last few years, people potentially might not believe at first. And this also this swings the other way, because when they realize you've taken the time, they're like, "Wow, no one does that," and then they go and show their friends and kind of share it out, which is the ultimate goal. But yeah, make it very obviously for them. Don't think too much about it. I guess a third point is, you don't have to do this, but if you are looking for that second stage, like activation or re-engagement, like, do have an ask in the video. If you use like Bonjoro, the way it works is we allow you to include links on the videos. So at the end of the video, you can say, "Hey, please go and check out this link." And that might be, we have some organizations who are specifically trying to drive people to watch another video they've done, like a high-end piece that kind of runs through the year. Some people are trying to get people to I guess, sign on for another year or increase donations. Some people just want people to tell other people about the work or to get involved in a non-monetary way. So again, if that's something that is valuable at that stage, just say it. Just say, "Hey, it's been an amazing year with you. Do you know anyone else who would like to get involved, or do you know anyone else who would do X, Y, Z?" Don't be afraid to ask people. If they love you, will be willing to help out.
Yeah, I love that. Like, don't waste your opportunity for a call to action. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Well, Matt, tell us where we can find this amazing product.
If you head to bonjoro.com, if you sign up, you'll actually get a video from somebody somewhere in the world. Maybe me, maybe someone else. So like, one thing is you kind of get to feel it firsthand, which I think is quite nice. If you want to reach out to me in person, you can always get me on LinkedIn. If you type in Papa Bear, I'm the guy in the bear suit that turns up. So feel free to connect. I do have one of my teams specifically, who's West Coast, has been helping a bunch of our nonprofits kind of get going. So if it is something you'd like to try, let us know. I'll have one on the team actually like hop on a call and kind of walk you through specifically, because we've seen, depending on the size of organizations, there's maybe some easier starting points. But look, we're trying to help out more. So please don't be a stranger and reach out and let us know if we can help.
Yeah, I have an account, and it took me about 5 minutes to get all the way through the setup and make my first video. It couldn't have been easier. It was really, really slick. And I'm really excited to use it with my clients, to be honest. So I think it's great. Thanks so much for being here today and for talking about personalized video. I think that this is the wave of the future for the innovative nonprofits out there. So thanks, Matt.
No problem, Jess. Wonderful to be here.
All right, folks, that's our show. Be sure to follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Jess Birkin. We want to hear from you. Send us a message at our website, charitytherapy.show. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at birkinlaw.com/signup. Charity Therapy is a production of Birkin Law Office, PLLC. Our theme song is by Whalehawk. And remember, folks, this podcast is produced for your entertainment and is not a substitute for actual legal advice.